that I've been asked to speak tonight, and I was thinking, in my head I was going, okay, I have to email Dale tomorrow and get a way out of it. And I was like, I think I'm gonna play that mom card where I'm like, my kids are sick, I just can't do it, like something has come up, right? Because what I felt in that moment was that in light of what these amazingly talented women were doing, I just felt like such a fraud, and I felt like, how could I have anything to contribute to this conversation at all? I felt totally inadequate. And then at one point in the night, Maureen Muldoon asked us to put our hands over our hearts and to just tune into what our hearts, like a message that we needed to hear from our hearts. And the word that I heard loud and clear was the word bold. And I knew in that moment that I needed to just accept this invitation and be bold and unapologetic in my story and my life and what I have had to learn, in the hopes that maybe someone would be interested in that. And when I was thinking about my decision to do that, I realized how aligned that was with the whole purpose of this group, which is just that everyone, I believe that everyone has some gift or passion or talent that is just waiting to burst forth into the world, and that sometimes we just have to get out of our own way in order for that to happen. So I know I'm supposed to be talking about focusing on what matters in photography, but I can't talk about what I've learned from photography without first talking a little bit briefly about my passion, beginnings of this passion for me. Whoa. Oh, not that one. Skipped one. See, technology in me every time. Okay, well, maybe it'll pop up here in a minute. Okay, so I wish I could say that I knew from a young age. No, it's still not there. I wish I could say that I knew. There's a really fun picture of my dad and my brother and me, little kids. But anyway, I wish I could say that I knew from a young age that I was interested in photography. I wish I could say I picked up a camera when I was really little and just felt this like stirring passion in my soul. But the truth of the matter is that I didn't. My dad was a photographer though, and he was really into photography. So everywhere we went, everywhere we went, these were the days of film. One before that, Dale. I think it's blanking out, I don't know why. You could leave it on that one though, that's fine.
It is blank, the third one's blank.
They're all, whatever, this is my story of my life.
Oh, okay.
You can leave it on that one. I'll get there in a minute. So anyway, these were the days of film. So my dad would carry around everywhere with this giant bag that had film. He would take his tripod. And so I was exposed to it early on. And always, I think my greatest appreciation for it really stemmed from the fact that he always had amazing pictures from our vacations. So I loved to see those, and I always loved looking through them. And then a little bit later on, I was always the girl at the party that had the camera, that was just making sure that I was taking pictures of like who was there and the silly things that we were doing. In high school, I did actually take a photography class, and I got really into it for an entire year, my senior year of high school. And again, this was the days of film, so it was just such a tactile and magical experience to learn photography at that time. So I literally learned how to roll film in the canisters in the darkroom and watch the images emerge in the chemical bath. It just was the coolest thing, and I was really into it. But and the photography teacher at my high school at the time sort of told me, like, you have an eye for it, and I thought that was fine. But it was a time in my life when I was trying on a lot of different identities, and I got really interested in marine sciences and conservation, so I decided to go and do marine biology. And clearly that worked out really well for me. But I would not have at that time ever considered to do anything creative because of a story that I had started to tell myself from a young age. So this is me and my brother. He's 1 year older than me, and he is a creative powerhouse. From a young age, my brother could draw anything, paint anything. He could play music by ear. This picture is pretty prophetic because he has headphones on and he's in the music industry now. He, when we were in high school, built a half pipe that he and his friends would skateboard on in our backyard. So he could even do all the engineering stuff with it too. He just had this sense of making something out of nothing in this really magical way. And even to this day, quick story, it was super annoying. We went to see him and his wife just built this new house in the mountains of Colorado. And so we rolled up there and he's showing me the house, and then he's showing me this dining room table that he made from truck bed wood and some iron pipes. And it looked like something out of a Restoration Hardware catalog. I felt so wildly inadequate. So, so I just decided that like there's only so many creative genes in the pool, and he got all of them. So I was gonna have to be like book smart or something. So what happened was, looking back on it now, as a creative person in my life now, I see though that even though I decided that I wasn't creative and I started to tell myself that story, there was a part of me that really desperately wanted to be. So I asked my mom at a young age to sign me up for an art class, and I would come home every week and see what I was capable of doing compared to what my brother was capable of doing, and I just always felt like it wasn't good, right? So my mom, in that time period, actually framed this picture that I did in that class, and it was like a duck. It was like ducks with charcoal. It was like colored charcoal. Ducks swimming in inner tubes at sunset. It was so random. But my mom framed it and still has it hanging in her house to this day. And when it went up on the wall, I was so full of like pride and shame at the same time. But now as a mom, when I go home and I see it, I'm like, of course a mom would want to frame that and keep it there even after her kids were grown, right? Like, of course. So it really wasn't until I was in my mid-30s that I kind of fell back in love with photography. So my kids were babies, and I was trying to just document their day-to-day baby life, right? And I was getting really frustrated with my little point-and-shoot camera on the automatic settings. I was like, oh, they're blurry, whatever. So I got myself an entry-level Nikon camera, and then I pretty quickly decided that those automatic settings weren't really cutting it for me either, and so I started kind of playing around with, well, how would I teach myself to learn in manual mode, and what was that I learned in high school? And pretty quickly, I was taking some photos of my kids that were different than what I was getting on my camera's automatic settings. And from there, I just kept shooting, and I was posting on social media pictures of my kids. And the next thing I knew, I had, like a friend that would say, hey, will you just take a quick picture of so-and-so for like their 4th birthday? Or like, will you take a picture for our family's Christmas card? And so I was always like, sure, I like photography. I'll do that for you, and you're my friend, absolutely. People had babies. I was like, let me take pictures of your babies. There's people in this room whose babies I've taken pictures of, right, girls? So anyway, so I was always happy to do it. And then when friends of those friends asked me to take pictures, then I was kind of like, well, wait a minute. No, maybe I'm onto something. So now I just very kind of organically have started this business of family and portrait, candid, milestone photography. And I'm super passionate, not just about the photography itself, but I'm super passionate about having a business that is based on helping people to live with their memories and their images. So I have a complimentary in-home art and print consultation now as part of my business model, because I so firmly believe that we have to live with our memories and see them every day rather than having them collect dust on a hard drive somewhere. But if you would have asked me 10 years ago if I would be doing this, I would say absolutely not. I wouldn't have imagined it, but now I can't imagine not doing it. So my kids, that's one more of a mama and her boy. Okay, so my kids are 8 and 10, and I was talking to them about how I was going to come and give this speech tonight, and I was saying that I was asked to talk about why I do photography. And my youngest son piped up, and he was like, yeah, Mom, why do you do photography anyway? Right, like, it takes up so much of your time, whatever. Okay, why do you do it? And I was like, well, buddy, being a family and spending time together is the most important thing I'm ever going to do, and like being your mom. So I take pictures so that I can remember our trips and our milestones, right? But I also take pictures so that I can remember all of the little things about our day, so that I can remember what their toes look like when they both fit in the bathtub at the same time. Or meal times, right? Like little baby food meal times. I once took an entire series of images so that I would remember what my son's eyelashes looked like. That's not even a joke. I told him that, I take these pictures and that it's important to me so that we can all remember our life together. And that I do it for other moms so that they can all remember too. When I was answering that question for him, the other thing that I realized, though, is that a big part of the reason why I do photography is it's become this amazing creative outlet for me that I never saw coming. And it was like this gift that I've been given that just blew up my whole world, from like going into like black and white into 3D high def. And it's, I can't ever imagine putting my camera down now. I feel like it would be sort of like letting go. See. Okay. You know what, Dale, if you could just hit play, let's see if that does the trick. Of course not, guys. Well, we made it halfway. Okay, we're back on. Okay, so anyway, but not doing photography for me now would be like losing some of the deepest parts of my soul, I believe. So what is it about photography that helps me to live deeply, or to go deep into the everyday, or to focus on what matters? And what I've really realized in trying to answer this question for myself is that in my photography, and in life, it's really about 5 key simple things. So number 1, you pay attention to the light. Number 2, you see something special. Number 3, you choose your focus point. Number 4, you let go of the shutter. And number 5, you hold on to the feeling and the memory that you've created. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about each of those. Number 1, focusing, paying attention to the light. So in photography, a stellar image is all about the light. You can have the most beautiful subject in the most beautiful setting, but if you do not have light as part of that story, that image is probably going to fall a little flat. Consequently, you could have kind of a mediocre subject and kind of a mediocre setting, but if you have some gorgeous light as part of that image is just going to take your breath away in some way. So as a photographer, I've learned to always look for the light, and what I've noticed is the more that I look for it in my lens, the more I'm noticing it in my life as well. And it's kind of like I took this key aspect of photography and sort of turned it into this key aspect of living. So, mostly in my life, there have been seasons of frustration or overwhelm or heartbreak or challenges, but there in the last couple of years have been some things that have sort of taken me to some places that have actually been pretty dark. And it was in those times of deep, dark sadness that I just had to remind myself, keep looking for the light. Keep looking for the light. Find the source. Let the light wrap around you until you can feel a little bit of a silver lining somewhere. So, what I found is just that both in life and in my work, looking for the light is always a clue as to where to start to create more depth or meaning or peace. The second one is to see something special. So in the photography world, it's often referred to as having an eye. And when I was first posting images on social media, people would say, oh, you have an eye, you have an eye. And I always thought that was so funny because I am not someone who actually has an eye for detail. In fact, I miss details all the time. And I think that it's because my mind is constantly racing and I can pretty quickly get going on the freight train of the racy, busy mind, and I miss details around me all the time. So what I really noticed about photography is that the more I was sort of training my eye, I was actually really more training my mind. And I think we all have this capacity within us to slow down and notice the finer details in all of our everyday surroundings. It just takes a little bit of stillness and quiet to kind of get to that point, to start to see things a little more clearly. And I think our physical world is just bursting forth with all of these lovely and delicious little details that are just crying out for our attention if we can just slow down enough to see them. So an example of this would be like, I could be driving my mom taxi, going to soccer practice, and I could be racing through my mental to-do list, or I could just be in the moment behind the wheel of the car and notice that on the horizon there is this beautiful pastel winter sunset happening, right? Or, I could be walking my dog at night. I could be in such a hurry to get home and get in front of the TV or on social media, behind a screen. Or I could slow down and I could notice the way the crescent moon is kind of framed in between the branches of a tree in the most beautiful way. So I think that, we all really have it in us to be able to notice those things. The other thing that's important in photography is looking at the lens that you choose. And, I could stand in one spot, like in this picture, and take a wide angle lens. And I could kind of have my subject really small in comparison to sort of the grandeur of the outside world. And similarly, I could stand in the same spot and attach a macro lens, which would allow me to actually capture the details on a tiny snowflake. And it would be a very different picture, right? So, sometimes I think that there is a time and a place to look at things with a wide angle. And sometimes there's a time and a place to really slow down and go deeply, deeply into the tiniest details. And you kind of have to move around a little bit with a macro lens and see like what makes this interesting and what makes this special. And you have to really slow down and be thoughtful about that. So the next one is choose your focus point. When I first started to get back into photography, excuse me, I think we're gonna all cold. I was always on the camera's automatic setting. So what that does for your focus, what that means is that the camera is a machine and it doesn't know what the most important parts of your story is. So in order to compensate for that, it's just gonna activate all of the focus points on the camera's sensor in the hopes that it gets it right? So it wants the whole picture to be sharp so that whatever you think is important, it's gonna have covered the bases. And the day that I taught myself how to choose my focus points and override what the camera did was the day that I really felt my voice and my creativity as an artist get that much stronger. There was just such creativity about sort of making that choice. So did I want the focus of a picture to be like on my son's eyes? Did I want the focus points in the picture to be like a connection of hands and feet? Did I want there to be a story, maybe behind the story somewhere? And when I realized I could do this in photography, it just started to really change my world a lot. And now it's just one of the biggest decisions that I make, and I'm automatically doing it every time I take a picture. I'm automatically choosing so quickly where I want that focus to be. Interestingly enough, I've noticed that focusing has also become a theme in my life now. So I can choose to focus on the thoughts that I have on any given situation or any given day. I could see my, temper tantruming 2-year-old as an annoyance, or I could see my temper tantruming 2-year-old as a small child who needs something from me, and maybe somehow I disconnected in my day and I need to re-engage and focus on what he's trying to tell me. I could really look at the winter and say, I hate the winter, it's so cold, I'm stuck indoors and it's freezing, and there's nothing fun to do. Or I could look at it and say, but this is a time to rest and rejuvenate and let the land lie fallow and just kind of wait and see what the new growth of spring is going to be, and maybe I'm going to take care of myself in a little bit of a different way in these months. I also think when you look at where we focus, we women are like, yes all the time. We're people pleasers, we're CEOs of our households, we hold down jobs, we say yes to everything, right? And so what I've noticed in my work as a photographer is it's far more compelling for me to look at an image that I've taken where maybe 1 or 2 things are in focus rather than the whole thing. And I sort of feel that way about my life too, right? Like I kind of feel like if I have everything in focus, it sort of all feels mediocre and scattered and not that interesting. But if I have 1 or 2 things that I'm really pouring my heart into, and I really am like letting my soul flow through, to me it just feels that much more rich and meaningful. So that's a little bit about choosing your focus point. So the next one is letting go. Now, I find it really hard to let go. And this is such a running theme in my life, I can't even tell you. And I'm not talking about like material objects or physical things. I'm talking about feelings and emotions and chapters in my life and people that are important to me. I'm a pretty emotional person. I feel things pretty deeply, and it's just hard for me to let go. And I think that's why I got so excited about photography, because I felt like this is a way I can hold on, and I can hold on with a death-like white knuckle grip. Like, no, my kids aren't getting that big that fast, and no, time isn't getting away from me that fast. But what I realized, interestingly enough, is that in photography, you actually can't take that picture until you release. So you literally have to let go of the shutter before you can capture that moment. And the last one is hold on. And this one's actually very simple for me. as much as I've learned in life that you have to sort of let go and let life move through you and flow through you, at the end of the day, the reason why I do what I do is that I do like to hold on, and that my memories and my feelings about the people that I love and the life that I've built are the most important thing to me. And, if you were to ask me what would I grab in a fire, it would absolutely be my hard drive. There's no question about it. I mean, assuming everyone was out of the house. So Dale asked me here tonight to talk a little bit about my work, and in getting to know her a little bit, I was sharing a little bit about this personal project that I decided to do for 2018. And I'm calling this project the One of a Million Project. And at the heart of this project is the message that no matter what we do matters. And, this project kind of got started for me at the tail end of 2017. I was feeling pretty down about the state of affairs in the world. And I just was like hearing all of these voices out in the world of the politicians and the movers and the shakers and the people that had these voices of influence. And if you think about it, in order to have that level of a platform, it's really like a 1 in a million chance, right? Like, what are the odds that someone's going to be elected like the next president of the United States, or something of that nature? So it's really like a 1 in a million chance. And I just was like hearing all of these important people saying and doing all these things, and I wasn't impressed by what they were saying and doing. And I just started to have this prayer or this plea on my heart, like, how are we collectively going to rise up and kind of get ourselves to a different place as a society and as a culture? And so I was kind of thinking about it, and I was sort of starting to notice, though, that I knew people in my life every day who were doing amazing things, and people in my personal life that were just showing up to their lives, that were doing positive things in the community and in the lives of others. And so I was thinking, like, well, my hairdresser, I really value what she does, and my neighbor who's a therapist, she's making a difference in the world. My beautiful friend Laura, who is so passionate about teaching yoga to kids. Like, I just started to think about all of these people. They were like one of a million people, right? It's like one of a millions of people. But when you take them all together, it sort of weaves this beautiful tapestry of good and positivity in the world. And oh man, it's okay, we're almost at the end, so it's fine. But it just really weaved this beautiful tapestry of good and change. And so my hope...
Is that it?
No, but that's a fun picture too. It's just a different night is all. There we go. It's all right. I'm almost at the end. There was just one more. If you could scroll all the way down to the end, Dale, and just pop on that last picture at the end that I might have just totally... Yeah, we can leave that up. Okay, yeah, we're good. I did something on the remote because technology and me don't really jive well, but we'll just leave that like that. Okay. Oh. All right, well, we get it. So anyway, but at the heart of this message, again, is just that no matter what we do matters. And this project is actually something that in a perfect world I would have already launched and could give you the website for, but I have done the website. It's just I haven't launched it yet. So it is coming in a couple weeks, and if you want to follow along on, go to my photography website or follow along on any of my social media outlets, you're going to start to see some of these things roll out. And it's just really a way to celebrate people in our community that are showing up and doing positive things. So, I just kind of want to wrap up tonight and say that if there's one takeaway that you get from me standing up here tonight, it's just that I really hope you hear that we all have this spark of creativity within us, and just that sometimes we're our own worst enemies. I think that before we can have a conversation about focusing on what matters, we have to believe that we matter. And we have to believe that what we say and do and contribute matters. And, what I've started to really kind of notice is that in a lot of ways it matters less about how it matters to other people. And at the end of the day, it really matters about how it matters to us and that we're doing what is important to us. I spent decades really convinced that I had nothing creative to offer the world. It actually took me a couple of years to call myself a photographer, and I still struggle to call myself an artist. To me, that sort of seems fraudulent, and I'm not sure that those things fit. And I've really had to kind of try to overcome a lot of those hurdles. And there have been a few things that have really helped me along the way, but there's one particular thing that I did want to share tonight in case anyone is interested and maybe relates to a little bit about what I'm saying, is that there is a particular book that was life-changing for me, and it was Elizabeth Gilbert's book called Big Magic. And I know Elizabeth Gilbert wrote Eat, Pray, Love, and everybody loved it, and it turned into a movie, and like it launched 1,000 solo trips to India and endless bowls of pasta, and it's a great book, but I think that Big Magic is far and away her most important work to date. So if I could say anything, it would be to check out that book. And I was hoping to leave you tonight with a part of that book that was so inspiring to me, and I hope that it inspires you in the same way. So Elizabeth Gilbert writes in Big Magic, "Look, I don't know what's hidden within you. I have no way of knowing such a thing. You yourself may barely know, although I suspect you've caught glimpses. I don't know your capacities, your aspirations, your longings, your secret talents, but surely something wonderful is sheltered inside of you. I say this with all confidence because I happen to believe we are all walking repositories of buried treasure. I believe this is one of the oldest and most generous tricks the universe plays on us human beings, both for its own amusement and for ours. The universe buries strange jewels deep within us all and then stands back to see if we can find them. To hunt, to uncover those jewels, that's creative living. The courage to go on that hunt in the first place, that's what separates a mundane existence from a more enchanted one."
All right, that was drop the mic worthy, don't you think? That was fantastic. So Gina Graham, photographer, writer, blogger, and professional speaker. Wow. Gina, was that your first time speaking publicly?
I don't think, I was trying to remember if I've spoken since high school in a public setting, but I don't know, maybe.
Well, you need to add that
but
to your
maybe.
resume, right? So what's been really fun for me is that when I get to meet people individually and have these one-on-one conversations and get to know them and know that they have something great to share, but then standing there and being like, oh my gosh, that was great. Like, so, and a lot of work goes into this too. So Gina, thank you for all that time and effort. We appreciate it.